Good morning. Oh, it's a good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Law Sessions. My name is Samuel Senyonjo. Yes. Yesterday we had our lecture in what we call consideration. We are still doing the law of contract. And yesterday we had consideration. I managed to talk about what is consideration and define consideration. And I went on to give the rules governing consideration. This morning, I'm going to be finishing up with the rules of consideration, and I'm going to talk about what happens when there is no consideration, and then I'll give the summary and we shall call it a day. This afternoon, I'm used to recording in the morning. This afternoon, we shall be finishing the rules of consideration, and then we are going to talk about what happens if we do not have consideration in our contract, and then lastly I'm going to give the summary of consideration, and tomorrow we shall introduce something new. I'm going to be talking about 4 of them. Actually, I'm going to give 4 of them because yesterday I gave 4 rules of consideration, and today I'm going to give the remaining 4 rules of consideration. Number 1, I'm doing rules governing consideration, and then number 5 is a person who performs a public duty is not supposed to be given consideration. Okay, maybe a recap. What is consideration? Consideration is something that I lose to you. If say we are in a contract, that's something I lose, maybe the money or something else. That is what we call consideration. And what you gain, I lose, you gain. I lose, you gain. You gain, I lose. So that is called consideration. We saw it very well that it's supposed to be in monetary terms. Yesterday we talked about that. In monetary, it can be measured in monetary or economic value. If it has no economic value, then it cannot amount to consideration. Now, today I'm saying that another rule that governs consideration is that if you are performing a public duty, then you are not supposed to be given consideration. The case effect I have is the case of Collins versus Godfrey. It is 1831 case. Collins, as in Collins, Collins versus Godfrey. So it is a case of 1831. What happened in that case? Collins was asked by Godfrey to be a witness in court of law. So he promised that he was supposed to give him a certain amount. He was supposed to give him money. But then thereafter, Godfrey never gave Collins the money that is the consideration that he actually promised him. So Collins went to courts of law and is the plaintiff in this matter. The plaintiff and the defendant is Godfrey. So he went to court of law for adjudication, and the courts of law held that was a public duty. He was not entitled to be given consideration. He was not supposed to be given money. Why? Because it is incumbent upon him. It is a creature of the law that if you are a witness, you're supposed to come and witness in courts of law. Then you are not supposed to be paid for to witness in courts of law. So, if it is a public duty, if you are supposed to do it, it is a creature of the law that you are supposed to do that. Then you cannot go on and claim consideration. So the case in point, put it down, Collins versus Godfrey. It is a locus classicus case on that. If I say locus classicus case, I'm meaning that it is a prominent case. It is the prominent or most prominent case to that principle if I give you. So if I mention that word locus classicus, it is a Latin word. Just to know that it means that it is a prominent case. Hope we are at par. So that principle or another rule of consideration is that public duty, if you are performing a public duty, you are not supposed to be paid. However, as I said yesterday, every general rule, it has an exception. The exception is in the case of Glassbrook versus Glamorgan County Council. Let me give you the spelling. Glassbrook. It is Glassbrook. double S B R double O K E. Then you write bros, B R O S, versus G L A Morgan, G L A. Then you write Morgan County Council. It is the case of 1925. What happened in this case? There was an outbreak, not an outbreak, a strike in a certain mine. So the owner of the mine contracted the local police to come and guard the place and maybe protect the plants, etc. So the strike was so vile that the local police couldn't manage. So what they did, they went for a private police, and the owner had promised I alone to pay these other additional private police. But then the owner refused to pay the promise. He refused to pay. So what the police did, this one, Morgan County Council, they went to courts of law to demand for the consideration. It was held. Sorry, they are disturbing us. The phone, please do not call on the phone. We are recording. We are live recording. So it was held that, yes, it was a public duty at the first instance, the first police that protected the mine. But this additional private police was another thing. They were supposed to be paid for. So if it is an additional work to the private duty, if I do an extra work, if I provide an extra service, not as provided by the law, I'm supposed to be paid consideration. So that is the exception to the rule that if you are doing a public duty, you are not supposed to be paid. Okay, another rule is that consideration must be lawful. That is provided for in our Contracts Act, Section 19. Contracts Act, Cap 2010, that the consideration must be lawful. That is the general rule, that the consideration must be lawful. So if it is lawful, it cannot be enforced in courts of law. And now, when may it be not be lawful? 1. If it is forbidden by the law. The consideration is not lawful if it is forbidden by the law. If you have any law to the effect that consideration is not lawful, then you cannot enforce it in courts of law. You cannot go to courts of law to enforce unlawful consideration. I've been giving that example of prostitutes. Like if you do, maybe if someone is persuading you that, okay, let me give you consideration as sex, that is something unlawful. So it cannot be enforced in courts of law. Like, let me give you Cuba in consideration for the work you've done. That is unlawful. It is forbidden by the law. It cannot be enforced. Hope we are clear on that. And then number 2, if it is fraudulent. If the act you want to do is fraudulent, the consideration you want to give me is fraudulent, then it cannot be enforced by the law. Any fraud act cannot be enforced by the law. If the act or the consideration is fraud, then it cannot be enforced by the law. Hence, that consideration is under Section 19, bad. Under Section 19, the same is bad. It cannot be enforced. We cannot enforce the same. Another one is, if it does injure the property of another person. That is number 3. If it does injure the property of another person, then it cannot be lawful. Like, for example, I can do for you something. You can promise me that I'm going to give you money if you destroy for me that house. That is the consideration. Giving money, but what I'm supposed to do is to destroy the property of another. So if consideration is to destroy the property of another, then it cannot be enforced by the law, and the same is unlawful. It is not lawful. Another, number 4, if it is to injure the person of another, or if it is to injure another person, then that consideration is unlawful. If you tell me that what you're going to do for me is to injure the other person, and that is the consideration, I'm going to give you this, but you have to do this. So that consideration is unlawful and it cannot be enforced by the law. We are dealing with the point or the rule that says that consideration must be lawful. If it is unlawful, then we cannot enforce it. Another, it must not be immoral. If it is immoral, then it cannot be enforced. So if the consideration is immoral, we cannot enforce that consideration. Hope we are clear, very clear on that. And another point, I think number 6, if it is against public policy. You have many public policies. So if the consideration I'm going to do is against public policy, then I cannot enforce that. It cannot be enforced in courts of law, and hence it is unlawful. That is another rule that governs consideration. I've said number 5 is person. A person who performs public duties. If you are performing public duty, then you are not supposed to be paid. But then it has an exception if I do extra service or extra work beyond what I'm supposed to do. And then number 6 is the consideration must be lawful and it must not be unlawful. The exception is to that it must be lawful. The exceptions are: 1, the exceptions that the consideration must be lawful, exceptions are: number 1, where the plaintiff is ignorant of that unlawful act. If I am ignorant that the consideration was unlawful, then I can enforce it to courts of law. That is point number 1. And point number 2, if I've not yet performed that unlawful act, then I can enforce it in courts of law. Like, for example, I got to know that this consideration is unlawful, it is bad by the law. Then I do not perform it. I have not yet performed it. Then I can go to courts of law for any remedy, to provide for any remedy. That is an exception according to the Contracts Act. Hope we are clear on that. And number 3, if the court is satisfied that the consent was, the agreement was induced by either undue influence, misrepresentation, coercion, or fraud. If the court is convinced that you are induced, that the agreement was induced by undue influence. What is undue influence? Undue influence happens where, say, a superior person influences the other person of lower rank. So if I'm of superior rank and I influence you to do something, then the courts of law are going to be considerate. Like, for example, if a parent coerces or influences the child, then the child may be remedied. They may give the proper consideration. Why? Because they were induced to enter into an agreement with undue influence. That is number 1. 2, if there is what we call duress or coercion. If I force you that if you don't do this, then I'm going to do this. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. I'll kill you, or I'll do this if I threaten you anyway. If I coerce you, if I carry out duress on you, if I force you to do something, then the consideration, then the courts of law may give remedy to you about the consideration. Yes. Another thing, I talked about misrepresentation. If, like, for you readers of the Bible, you know the story of Jacob and the 2 wives. He worked for another, they gave him another. Remember that story of Rachel and the sister. So, the reason as to why he worked was because of misrepresentation. He was supposed to get another wife, but they gave him the sister. So that was misrepresentation. Misrepresentation is that. That is the example I can give to bring it out, to bring out misrepresentation. Or like if I tell you I'm selling you Gucci, yet indeed it is not Gucci. So I buy, knowing that I'm buying Gucci, yet I'm not buying Gucci. Or Nike. If we misrepresent as if you are selling me Nike, and yet it is not Nike, it is duplicate. So I'm buying, why? I'm buying a brand. I'm buying Nike. I'm buying Gucci. But then it is not Gucci. So I have a remedy. So here, if there was misrepresentation, there is misrepresentation about the constellation, then I can go to courts of law. I can go to courts of law and get remedy. I'm on the point of constellation must be lawful. It must not be lawful. So I'm giving exceptions to the general rule that if there is misrepresentation, if you've misrepresented the product or the agreement or anything, and I enter just with misrepresentation, then the courts of law are going to be considerate. So those are three exceptions. Those are three exceptions. One, ignorance. If I was ignorant of the unlawful act. And number two, if I did not go on to do that unlawful act. And number three, if I was induced into an agreement unknowingly, either by undue influence or coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, or fraud, then the courts of law can give me the remedy. Hope we are clear on that. I'm doing the rules of constellation. And that is number 6. This is very important to note. Where part of the constellation is unlawful, we have a single constellation, but part of it is unlawful, the whole contract is illegal, is void ab initio. So we have a contract, part of the constellation, I'm offering you marijuana as the constellation, and part of the constellation, I'm going to give you money. So this part of the marijuana part which is unlawful, is going to render the whole agreement void ab initio. Void, as in null, as in, it is going to render the agreement to have no legal effect. It is not going to be enforceable by the law. It is not binding on any party. So if part, that is very important to note, that if part of the constellation is unlawful, then the whole constellation is unlawful. We are clear on that. Another rule is that one of part payment. Part payment, the general rule is that part payment does not amount to constellation. If you were supposed to give me 200,000 and you've given me 150,000, that does not amount to constellation. And that should be differentiated by what I discussed yesterday. Because yesterday I talked about sufficiency and adequacy. That the constellation need not be adequate, but just need to be sufficient. That even if you are selling a car of 100 millions and you sell it and they give you a constellation of 10 million or 1 million, that is enough for constellation. The courts of law shall not interfere with you persons. The courts of law will just say, so be it. Why? Because you are grown-up persons, you have the free will, you are not coerced, you acted freely. So now, I'm talking about part payment. If we agreed, we made a contract, and we agreed that you are going to give me 100 million shillings, and you give me 50, that does not amount to constellation. That is the general rule. That the constellation must be full as we agreed. If we agreed 100 million shillings, then you ought to give me 100 million shillings. And then if you do not give me 100 million shillings, what does it mean? It is not consideration, not until you pay in full. That is the rule. And that is the rule. In this case, you need to write down, most of those who want to offer law and those who are offering law, and go read this case. It is called Pinel case. It is an old case, but it is very important. Pinel is P-I-N-N-E-L. Let me give you the citation. It is 1553 to 1774, All England Law Reports, at page 612. Hope yesterday I taught you how we do this citation. 1558 to 1774. All, you close the brackets after the years, then you put all, the word all, then you put E-R, then at page 612. It was reported in that volume. It is quite old, but the holding in that case is that, the principle in that case is that if you pay me halfway, then that is consideration. It doesn't amount to consideration. That is not good consideration. So you have to pay me in full. However, as I've been saying, and I repeat it, that every general rule in law, it has what we call an exception. It has an exception. We cannot just have a general rule, yes, no. We have an exception to every general rule. So we have exceptions. And the first exceptions I'm going to give you they are developed by common law. So the first exception to the general rule of part payment is if we agree, if we make another agreement and agree to the contrary of the first agreement. These are the exceptions of common law. Like if we come up with another agreement and we vary the first rights and we vary the first duties, then this general rule of part payment does not apply. That is number one. Number two, part payment by the debtor at a different place by the request of the creditor. This is the example. If, yes, so that is D'Souza 1553 to 1774, you put the brackets. After putting the brackets, you write the word all in capital letters, O-double-L, then you put E-R. After E-R, then you put what we call the page, and the page of that penal case is 612. So now, the exception to the general rule of part payment, number two, is part payment by the debtor at the request of the creditor on another place. This is the example. If you are demanding me 100,000, I'm supposed to pay you from, like I'm here at Kasubi recording from Kasubi. You are supposed to pay me, I'm supposed to pay you 100,000 at Kasubi. You are the creditor, and you tell me, no, look here, Samuel, please come to where? Come to Gaba. Come to Gaba and pay me from Gaba. So if I travel from here to Gaba, then I give you 90,000. The 10,000 is for the cost of transport from here, Kasubi, to Gaba. So if I chop off that 10,000, yet I was supposed to give you 100,000, then you cannot go to courts of law to demand for the 10,000. Why? Because you told me to come to Gaba, to pay from Gaba. It is you. It was at the request of the creditor. You cannot go to courts of law to demand for the 10,000. Why? You requested me. So if I pay you partly, I was supposed to give you 100, but I've given you 90,000. Then you cannot go to courts of law. Hope that one is clear. Number three, if the creditor is being paid by a third party. A third party. The third party pays the creditor, and the creditor decides that or resolves that, yes, you've paid me fully. If a third party, say my parents, you are my creditor, and my parents do pay you, or my mother or my father, and they do pay you, and then you tell them, or you waive, or you tell them that yes, I've been satisfied, then you cannot go to courts of law to demand. I mean, even if you've been paid in full, kawa, that is it. D'Souza, that is it. All, A-double-L, sorry. A-double-L, all. So if my parents pay you, the third party, if the third party pays you, you cannot go to courts of law that it is not Samuel who paid me. So if you've been paid by a third party, oh, they say, Samuel, no, cannot be taken to courts of law, let's pay for him. You cannot go to courts of law. That is another exception to part payment. Another one, if the debtor offers something else, maybe tangible other than money. If the debtor pays something else other than money, you are demanding me money, but I've given you my phone. You cannot go to courts of law demanding that I partly paid you. This phone I've given you can act as a compensation of the money I was supposed to pay you. So, the exception to part payment rule in penal law's case is if I give you something else other than money that can amount to full payment. Hope that is very clear. Then part payment by the debtor on earlier date. For example, I was supposed to pay you in October 2020. But you tell me, Samuel, I'm bad loaf. Please give me the money. If I give you the money, like if I was supposed to pay in October, this is an example, I was supposed to pay you in October, and then you tell me, Samuel, you know what, please give me the money this July. Then I tell you, you know what, yes, I'm going to pay the money, but I was supposed to pay 1M in October, so I'm going to give you 700. Then you accept the money before the period. You cannot demand for full payment. So if at your request I pay you before the date I was supposed to pay, then you cannot demand for the money when the other date comes. So those are the exceptions under common law. Remember, I told you we have common law and we have law of equity. Even yesterday I told you common law is like the Old Testament, the laws, and then law of equity is like the grace and coming of Jesus Christ, dying for us, giving us his righteousness. So law of equity came in to deal away the rigidities that common law had created, the rigidities, the harshness. So under law of equity, we have an exception, and it is called estoppel. Right? Estoppel. The doctrine of estoppel. Estoppel is E-S-T-O-P-P-E-L. That is the doctrine of estoppel. What is the doctrine of estoppel? It was developed in the case of Hertz versus Metropolitan Dairy. The spelling of Hertz is H-U-G-H-E-S versus Metropolitan. Metropolitan is M-E-T-R-O-P-O-L-I-T-A-N. Then R-A-I-L-W-A-Y. It is a case of 1877. That is the locus classicus case. That is the locus classicus case on the doctrine of estoppel. Now, what is the doctrine of estoppel? The doctrine of estoppel is who made a contract. It had certain rights and it had certain exceptions. Yes, it had certain rights where I was supposed to do this and this and this. You had a certain right. I was supposed to pay 100. That is your right. And my duty is to pay 100. But then, through your act and conduct, you waive. Yes, through your act or conduct, you waive. As if you are saying that, Samuel, I'm demanding you. Sorry, you are demanding me. But again, you go on and give me certain amount of money. Samuel, enjoy that. So, through your conduct, as if you waive, as if you are saying that, no, you don't give me that money. So you cannot come thereafter and demand for that money. Through your conduct, through your act, you know, the actions can speak faster even than words. Yes, like that example. You are demanding me, but again you kind of waive it. You give me even other sums of money, and we just continue with the life. So through your conduct, if you go to courts of law, I will raise doctrine of estoppel. You are estopped from demanding the money. Why? Because through your conduct, you behaved as if you forgave me the money. That is called the doctrine of estoppel in the case of Hertz. And that doctrine of estoppel can only work under the following circumstances. You can claim the doctrine of estoppel under certain circumstances. Number one, if you gave me a promise that I've forgiven you the money. That is number one. If you gave me the promise that I've forgiven you the money. That is number one. Number two, if I relied on that promise, it was strict, it was not a joke. The promise was not a joke. You gave me the promise, number one. The promise was not a joke. You were serious about it. And number three, I rely on that promise. If I rely on that promise, you gave me a promise that I've forgiven you the money, and I rely on that promise. Number four, it is inequitable, from the word equitable. So, it is inequitable for you to demand for that money. You gave me a promise. Samuel, well, yes, I've been demanding you 100,000, but I've forgiven you. Yes. And then, you are not joking. I rely on that promise. So, for now, for you to demand for that money, it is inequitable. It is not just. It is not fair. The courts of law are going to waive the date. If you are a creditor, they are going to waive it. That is the doctrine of estoppel. You are estopped from demanding the money. If you gave me a promise and I rely on that promise, you were not joking. It is not a joke. I rely on the promise. Then you can't demand for that money. We are still in the law of contract. The law of contract is very, very practical. If you have any person, you can probably explain them about this estoppel. Maybe they are demanding you and they are behaving as if they waived. They can't go to courts of law. They can't go to courts of law. Why? They waived. They are not interested. They promised you and you relied on it that they have forgiven you. Maybe now they are poor because of COVID, so they come back to you. Hey, Samuel, I'd forgiven you, but I want the money. You just tell them, go to courts of law. I'm speaking in the name of the law and not in the name of the Bible. So please, do not misquote me when we are dealing with the issues of the Bible. Then, number 8, existing contractual duty. If there is an existing contractual duty, then you cannot demand for consideration. Let me give you the case. It gives a very good example. The case is that one of Stilk versus Myrick. Stilk is S-T-I-L-K versus M-Y-R-I-C-K. It is a case of 1809. What happened in this case? The captain had 11 crew members on the ship. 2 of them deserted the ship, and then they remained 19. So what the captain did, he promised the 9. They were 11, 2 deserted. So he promised the 9 remaining persons that, you know what? I'm going to give you certain money. I'm going to give you certain money if we take this ship to the shore. So these persons worked hard to take the ship to the shore. So what this guy never gave them, after the voyage, he never gave them the money. He never gave them the consideration. So they went to courts of law. You know the whites, they like courts of law. They went to courts of law to demand for the promise. This wise judge I like, he said that in his holding, he said that, no, you guys, you are under contractual duty to do that. That was an emergency. So if there was an emergency, you are supposed to do the voyage to the shores. You are not entitled to any other payments because you are under contractual duty. Your duty is to sail that thing, that ship. So how dare you ask for consideration? It is your duty. It is your contractual duty. It is in the contract that you have to sail. And now emergency has come up. So you had to do what you're supposed to do, to take the ship to the shore, because that is your job. So if it is under contractual duty, you are a teacher, but there is a sudden emergency, you sign to the contract to teach, then you handle the emergency. If they promise you and they don't pay you according to that rule, you cannot go and claim for consideration. That is the rule, and that is rule number 8. Today, yes, I'm going to handle the rules. I've handled. And 2, I want to talk about the effect of lack of consideration. Yes, as I promised, and I'm going to give you the summary. So I've given you 8 rules. I'll give you the summary. I'll give you the summary hereafter. So now, let's talk about lack of consideration. What happens if you've made an agreement and there is no consideration? Nothing you're going to lose, nothing I'm going to gain. All. One party is going to lose, and the other party is not going to act. What happens? The general rule is that is section 20 of the Contracts Act, Cap 2020. The general rule that in contract law, if there is no consideration, then the contract is void ab initio. The contract is void. It has no legal effect. It cannot be enforced. It is not binding. Hope we are clear on that. If there is no consideration, this is what I'm trying to allude to. If there is no consideration, if you're not going to lose anything, and I'm not going to gain anything, or you are not going to act anything, there is no consideration in our agreement or in our contract, then it is not contract. It is like any other thing. But then, as I've said, every general rule in contract, it has what we call exception. So we have the exceptions in the Contracts Act. Number 1, exception number 1, if it is expressly written and it is registered with Register of Documents Act on the matter of love or natural affection, then consideration may be waived. If expressly write that this is my fiancé or this is my father, because you know love is in 4 philos, elos, phileo, elos. So if agape etc. So if I'm saying this is my father, or my father is saying this is my son, we are making a contract, but I'm going to need nothing. I'm not going to need the consideration. It's my father. And we write it, we register it with the Register of Documents Act, then consideration may be waived. It is an exception to the rule that contracts with no consideration are not binding, are void. If it is natural love, natural affection, then the courts of law are going to waive it. If you expressly write, then the contract is going to stand. It is going to be binding on the parties. Why? Natural affection, love. That is an exception number one. So number two, if you promise me to compensate me on something I did earlier on, I did for you something, maybe voluntarily, or I did you anything earlier on, and you promise that you are going to pay me, that consideration is binding. It is not void. I mean, it is not void. Even if it is a contract, it is a one-sided, it is a unilateral one, but it is not void. Why? Because you promised me. That is section 20. And number 3, a donor and a donee. A donor is like a giver. If I'm giving you something, I'm the donor. So you are the donee. I'm giving this land to my friend De Souza. So if I'm giving my land to De Souza, it is going to be binding. I mean, they cannot say that that contract cannot stand because it has no consideration. Why? Because I'm doing it voluntarily. I'm giving my land. So consideration does not affect donor, donee. It cannot affect it. Also, inadequacy of consideration. I think I discussed that in depth. And I gave the case, the Locus Velasquez case of Thomas versus Thomas. Inadequacy of consideration cannot invalidate the consideration. If we agree on any amount of money, if I'm buying your laptop at 1,000 or 10,000, and that is what we agreed, you cannot go to courts of law. Why? Because it is sufficient, even if it is not adequate. So there's a difference between sufficiency and adequate. If we agree on anything, courts of law will just say, so be it. So those are the 4 exceptions to the general rule that each and every agreement must have what we call consideration. I may be a donee, donor, donee, donor, donee, donor, donee. You're going to remove donor, D-O-N-O-R, donee, D-O-N-E-E. Let me give the summary of what we've studied. Today we've covered the remaining 4 rules of consideration. We've talked about what happens if there is no consideration. And now I want to give you the recap. I want to give you the summary of consideration. Remember, the definition I gave you, it was in Contracts Act, Section 2. And I said that consideration is the profit, is the right, is the gain I get. And on your side, the loss, the detriment suffered. That is what we call consideration. If we are in an agreement, I give you money, then I've suffered the money and you've gained the money. So that is consideration. I talked about many things. Talked about inadequacy. That inadequacy of consideration cannot invalidate the contract. Inadequacy. It doesn't need to be adequate. It just needs to be sufficient. That is consideration. I also talked about past consideration. We cannot consider past consideration today. If you did a certain work some time back, when we never agreed about the consideration, then you cannot come today all now and go to courts of law that, I did this and you promised to give me money. So the courts of law may not enforce that, save for the exceptions I gave you in the case of Powell versus Lau. I gave you that case of Powell versus Lau, where the past consideration may be considered by courts of law. But if you did a certain work and I promise you now to give you for the work you did, the courts of law may not enforce that, save for the exceptions I gave you in the case of Powell versus Lau. That is consideration. Then I've said part consideration does not amount to consideration. I've given you even the case of Thomas versus Thomas can work. Thomas versus Thomas. Then I told you yesterday that consideration must be capable of being measured in monetary terms or economic terms. It must be having economic value attached to it. So if you want to pay me in kind, I gave you money and you are telling me this, I want to give you marijuana, Cuba, and all those things. Or I want to offer you sex. You know this perverted generation. You give someone money, and when it comes to time of refunding the same, they will tell you, have this. And my friend, you cannot manage. So you're not supposed to pay me in kind. It must be at least having economic value attached to it or monetary value attached to it. Another thing, read that case of Chapo and Company versus NATO. I gave it to you yesterday. Chapo is CHAPPELL and Company versus NESTLE Company Limited. This is a 1960 case. So that is it about consideration. I've given you the rules, and I've given you what happens if we do not have the consideration. It is null and void. And then I've given you the exceptions to that we have exceptions, and that is section 20. So read section 19 of the Contracts Act, and also read section 20, and also read section 2 of the Contracts Act. Thank you for watching Law Series. God bless you.